Hey to the most amazing nurses. It is Dr. V here with Morning Infusion with Dr. V podcast, where we are intentional about teaching nurses how to work from anywhere around the world, making money and owning your own time, building profitable nurse coaching and consulting businesses. You will hear from amazing guests that have grown their companies and want to share insight into how you can do the same to change the face of healthcare as we know it. If you want to grow your businesses and leverage your knowledge as a nurse to grow wildly successful businesses at the top, instead of working your way to the top, head on over and join our Millionaire Nurse CEO group on Facebook, where you can ask questions and get updates on our live and virtual events to help you grow your businesses.
Good morning. Good morning. So this morning we have Queen. Now, Queen is not a nurse, okay? But as soon as I heard Queen's story, I was like, I have got to have Queen on the podcast because Queen has some valuable information that she needs to be giving to us nurses, as entrepreneurs. She is the boss of what she does. So anyway, so go ahead. So Queen, give us a little bit of a bio of who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me on, first of all. But yes, I am Queen, known as the Queen Blueprint. I am a global real estate strategist. I actually was in about $50,000 worth of debt, and in 2.5 years, I paid it all off. 6 months later, I purchased my first property in the United States at the age of 26. And then 3 years later, I actually sold that condo, purchased my first land in Africa, in Kenya. It's an eighth of an acre. And we're building a 4-bedroom, 4-bath duplex 10 minutes from the beach as a rental income property, because I believe in home ownership, but I believe in strategic, resilient home ownership. And that's me.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So tell us about, because I always ask nurses how they first came up into the nursing world, but you didn't come up in the nursing world. So we're going to talk about how you came up into the real estate world,
Sure.
because at the end of the day, what we want to do is we want to build, that resilient income is what we talked about. So you started out at Macy's initially, and then you went from Macy's and you went to this union job. And while you were at the union job, what happened during that time that you were there?
First of all, they worked me like a slave for 7 years. But so while I was at the union job, I feel like I've always had an issue with crazy authoritative figures. Okay. And for some reason at this company, they were always picking on me. Okay. Yes, I was always in trouble. And you'd never think of it looking at me. I was never in trouble in school. I didn't have any problems till I got to this job. And I was like, what is going on? Right. So I guess that was like the first indication that, like, girl, you just need to be out on your own because this is not working. You keep butting heads with these people in power. But they power tripped a lot at the gas company because those positions were their identity, where for me, it wasn't. It was just a job to me, right? It was just income. It was just a means to an end. So during the pandemic, things were going, I thought, pretty great. And then you guys know at the middle point of 2021 is when a lot of these really big companies chose to start forcing their employees back into the workplace. Prior to the pandemic, I had actually already expressed to them that I wasn't well. Right. I was going through something going on with my blood. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I was like falling asleep at work. I fell asleep at the wheel twice when they forced me back into the workplace. Yeah, it was just like really crazy. I felt like very empty in my body. And I was like, I don't know what's going on because I sleep long enough. Okay. I used to do 16 hours for you guys, and I can barely get through 4 now. So I expressed that to them and they just did not care. So, and I told them I'm scared to come back into the office because I'm experiencing these issues and I don't know what's going on. And I haven't been able to go see an actual doctor because of the shutdown. They still didn't care. So I said, you know what? I'm going to have to make a decision. I'm going to have to either choose my health or I'm going to have to choose this house. Because really, the only thing keeping me at that job was saying, I don't want to have to sell my house. Like my family had to sell. Well, they didn't have to sell, but they sold my family legacy. It was a 3-family brownstone in Brooklyn, New York. And I was like, I don't want to do that, right? I don't want to perpetuate that mistake, but I had to choose me or this house. And I chose to choose my mental and my physical health, and I sold it and I left the job.
So this was a house that had been in your family for a while? Is that what you're saying?
The brownstone was in my family. We were one of the first Black families on that block in Brooklyn. And 2018 is when I left the brownstone because my grandmother had passed away from dementia, and her power of attorney wanted to sell the house to get the money, but they didn't realize how much money was actually baked into this property. They sold it for 600 and something thousand dollars. It's now worth $2.2 million.
Wow.
Yep. Big mistake. And that's the problem. We don't really understand the power of real estate and the power of equity because we don't know what equity means. I didn't know what equity meant until 3 years later when I was trying to sell my condo. And I was like, oh, this is how this works. So yeah, it's unfortunate. But yeah, the condo that I sold was the one that I went and got myself because I was like, my mother's solution to us no longer being able to stay in that brownstone was, yeah, we're just gonna go into a shelter. And I was like, ma'am, absolutely not. I'm not doing that. I gotta go. But when you're on public assistance your entire life, you don't think about anything else, right? You stay in that system because you have a poor mindset. And it's sad to say, but that's what my mother had and still unfortunately does have, right? So her solution for getting her own was to go into a shelter. And my solution was, heck no, I'm going to go and continue the legacy that my family built for as being a homeowner, as owning property. And yeah.
You know, it's interesting that you say that because I remember, and I think it's all in what you are programmed for. You know, I say that we're wired for success, but we're programmed for failure. And so some of the things that we learned prior to the age of 7, I had this cousin who used to come down from the city, quote unquote, because we lived in the country. And so he would come down from the city and he would come down in this car. He would come down in this Jaguar and he would be in the driveway. And I will never forget it. And he would have a home in the city and he would have a home here in this in the country. And I remember seeing that and knowing that he had those two homes and thinking there's no way in the world that I'm not going to not have that with
same thing.
Right. And so I remember valuing home ownership in that same manner. But I also remember thinking, you know, of course, we should always own everything that we have. And so my parents owned their home. But I also remember this show of like people would come to our homes and they had this show of pride, right? Like they owned a bunch of things, like these cars and like all these nice things. And then I would ask my mom, like as I got older, I'd be like, well, you know, where is their homes? And I would go up there and they didn't live in homes, like they didn't live like where they live was they rented, number one. Number two, it was in like these poor rundown areas. And I was like, what is this about? That's crazy. Right?
Yeah.
Crazy. So what made you always think, and because if you came from, you know, someone who thought poor mindset, then what made you be the way that you are in that manner?
You know what? Watching I always had conversations with my grandmother. Now, I always preach about sharing the wealth mindset, and this is why, right? Because she didn't do that. I was an inquisitive child. I asked questions all the time. I'm still an inquisitive woman. Okay. I'll ask 50 million questions. I don't care. Right. So when I was little and growing up, and even when I got older, because I wanted to understand what would happen to this building when she passed away, I started asking questions. And that's when I found out about her actually taking out a reverse mortgage when I was in high school. And I didn't know. So I just asked a lot of questions. I was like, hey, grandma, you going to tell me about how this is supposed to run? What are we supposed to do with this? And also, my stepfather is absolutely amazing. And he always built houses. He's a contractor. He's a plumber. So he was always in and out of these places. And he would come back and like share stories about how this house was so pretty. And we built this cool thing. And I was like, heated floors. What's that? Like, I was just always very engrossed in those homeownership stories and like what was going to happen with our building. But the rest of my family wasn't. Like, they didn't ask questions. They didn't really want to know. They were just like, well, we're just here until, you know, she isn't here anymore. And then if we're not, we're not. And they just didn't care enough. But I feel like partially that's my grandmother's fault, to be honest, right? Mm-hmm. It's the elder's job to pass that down, right? It's the elder's job to tell those stories, to explain how and why we own something, right? You can't just say, yeah, we own it and that's it. Like, okay, but why? Why is it important for me to continue this legacy? And they just didn't get that when they were growing up, and they weren't inquisitive enough to ask. So they just let it go. But I've always been that way. I've always asked questions and wanted to learn and know these things. And my grandmother was always happy to tell me, I guess, because no one actually asked her. That's how I found out that we were the first, one of the first Black families on the block.
I love it. I love it. So now let's get into your paying off this $50,000 worth of debt. How were you able to do that?
Ooh, okay. So because I actually do have my bachelor's in psychology, at some point I realized that I was spending the money every time I was upset. So I said, because I sat down and I was like, how did I get here? I don't really pay for anything when I go out. I'm at work 90% of the time, because at this time I was a workaholic. I still kind of am in my entrepreneurship, but I'm like, where is this money going? And so it was really me trying to escape my family by flying away. I would go on trips, and every time I went away on a trip, I needed a whole new wardrobe. I wanted to like do like these crazy excursions and stuff. Like, I wanted to spend, like, ball out on these trips, basically. I needed a new luggage, like the whole nine. Yeah. And I liked JetBlue, and y'all know JetBlue is not cheap. So I ended up, and it didn't take me long. I think I got into the debt in like 18 months. Like, it was crazy. I got into 50. Yes, that quick. Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. Because I got the job in 2014. And I started paying it off in 2016, which meant that within that 2-year span, I spent $50,000.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So the very first step was confronting myself. Like, why are you doing this? And what are we doing it? How are we doing it? What are we doing? Right. And, so I decided to do that inner work, that mental health work, to figure out what was my trigger, right? And that just comes from the degree. Like, what is triggering you to spend this money at a hyper rate? Mm-hmm. And over, I want to say like a 30-day span, I took 30 days to really analyze when I wanted to spend, how much I wanted to spend, and how I felt after I spent. And it was always regret. Like, every single time I was like, oh, it's Christmas. When I first got the you know how the Amazon box or whatever it was arrives at your house, and you're like, oh my God, Christmas, it's so fun. And then when it was time to pay the credit card bills, I'd be like, oh, this is not good. We're going down a terrible path here. What's happening? But then something would happen with my family. I'd have an argument about something. And then I'd be like, man, forget that, YOLO. And remember, at this time, I'm young, right? So I'm in my early 20s. I'm like, I'm just going to blow some money. This is going to be great. Right? And the thing that really made me fast forward was finding out about my grandmother and realizing that she wasn't going to get better. And so this was, it was 2016 when she went into the hospital this one time, and I was like, I don't think she's coming out. And I was like, what happens to us if she doesn't come out? Because she's the one carrying the weight of everyone else. And so I was like, oh no, I can't be a kid anymore. Like I need to grow up. I need to be an adult. So I started researching credit. How does credit work? What is that? I started researching budgets. We've never been on a budget. I don't know. I didn't know what that was before I actually started looking at that in my 20s. And then it just went from there. I just set up a very aggressive payoff plan, and I'm human, right? We backslide. So obviously a couple of times I did backslide. So it's probably more like $60,000. But I stuck to it, and I got through all of it in 2.5 years. So by halfway through, I think it was May 2018, I was like, I did it.
I love it. And, and that's really important what you said about, your grandmother carrying everything and then you figuring it out. Because one of the things that I talk about all the time, because a lot of people are like, well, I feel guilty and I want my children to have what I didn't have. And I said, that's cool, right? But the deal is that you need to have them get it, right? And you surprise them every now and then, but as a general rule, they need to live their lives on their own.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, I had a friend who had it was her husband's ex-wife, right? Husband's ex-wife, who carried her children pretty much on her insurance, kept her children's children, did all these things for her children, and then all of a sudden she passed away, just dropped dead of a heart attack. And they not only had to deal with the fact that their mother just passed away unexpectedly of a heart attack, but now they've got to deal with all the financial aspects, everything that they've got to deal with. And that is not fair to the children, nor is it fair to anyone else. And so it is very, very key that we do that. So we're going to go to commercial break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about how you start investing in real estate.
Our live event is going down twice a year in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, called the Millionaire Nurse CEO Conference. We will be covering the blueprint and master plan to grow a wealthy and flourishing company. We love that you listen to the podcast, but we want you in the room. We will be sharing insights on marketing and sales strategies so that you are able to create more impact and make more money, creating more freedom so that you can do the things that you love. So join us for the nursing event of the century. Go to vpnursing.com to sign up for this life-changing event.
Okay, so now tell us how you started to invest and what you do for other people. So how did you start to invest in real estate? Tell us.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's actually really quick. Like, I don't think I would have started so quick if the pandemic didn't happen. It kind of made me sit down and like sit still. And so I was actually doing a YouTube series, and I was in these Facebook groups asking for guests. And this guy is like, hey, I bring Black businesses over to Africa. I'd love to be on your podcast. And I was like, you do what now? I was like, I need to, who are you? What do you mean? So I had him on the podcast, and like while we're doing the interview, I completely and totally forget that I'm doing an interview, because now I'm like doing the inquisitive thing, right? I'm like, well, how do you do this? And why is that? And this Africa that. And so towards the end, he asked me, he said, we need people like you on the continent. We need people like you to bridge the gap, because you talk about money mindset in a way that I've never heard anyone talk about it. And it's relatable and it's tangible. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, so would you ever want to bring your business to, because he's never actually brought a service over. So he was like, you'd be my first service, but I'd love to do that. He's always done like manufacturing or real estate. And I was like, man, no. I was like, first of all, I would have to learn so much about how they, and I plan on doing it anyway, but it wouldn't be a fast turnaround. It would be like a 3-year study period of me understanding their economy, of me understanding where the local people are as in their economic standing, like upper, middle, lower. How do they think? Why do they think it that way? Like it's a process to learn about money mindset. It's easy for me because I grew up as a Black woman, you know, in poverty. So I already know how we think. It's not too hard to figure that out. I just had to figure out the techniques to get us out of it. Right. So he said, well, he had mentioned that like when he does these, bring these businesses over to Africa, he gives them parcels of land included in the deal. And I was like, so instead of just giving me a parcel of land, can you just figure out how to get me an Airbnb by the beach? Because I do that all day.
Uh-huh.
And he was like, yeah. And now like we're business partners and it's great. Yes. Literally. So now what I do is I have actually went through the process myself of going into Kenya, onto the continent. I went in 2021 for the very first time.
Mm-hmm.
I cried.
Why did you cry?
It's a very spiritual thing to feel where your ancestors once were. And when I went in May, we went to the beach. I didn't cry immediately, but when we went to the beach, because of course I was like, nah, I need to see the beach. So we went into the water and the water was so warm. It was like somebody turned on a warm bath. Mm-hmm. And the waves felt like it was hugging me. Mm-hmm. And I just let go. And I just cried. I was like, oh my God, like I'm in Africa. Mm-hmm. I am in the motherland. This is crazy. Like never in a million years would I thought this would have happened so fast. It was really like a, yeah, I'll do that in my 40s kind of thing, you know, because I was so beholden to, yeah, I'm going to stay at this job. And thinking back on it now, I'm like, that was definitely like the last turning point. Because after that is when I said, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm not fighting with you guys to go back into the office. Like, I'm not doing it. And so I decided to go full on with my business because at the time I was a hybrid entrepreneur. So I was working on creating this money mindset clinic as it is now while I was at the job. But when this happened, I was like, I want to do real estate. I want to teach people about how important it is to own something. And I want them to know that they don't have to stay in the United States. You can have land, you can have real estate anywhere. And so after that, in 2020, September 2022 is when I signed the paperwork and purchased my parcel of land. But that's how I got into it. And then I decided I'm going to shift my focus away from just trying to help people get out of debt and just trying to help people figure out their credit and repairing their relationship with money. I want them to really focus on being strategic homeowners because the Black homeownership rate is 44%. And it hasn't budged not much since 2011. 2011, it was 41%. We haven't moved at all because we sell all the time. And I was like, dang, I'm a part of that statistic. Like I'm a part of the problem because I sold my condo. Right. My family is a part of the problem because they sold our brownstone. right? So I wanted to be a part of the solution, and now that's what I do. So I actually have 2 clients purchasing here in the United States. They're buying rental income properties, and I have another client who's buying in Kenya, actually 10 minutes away from my land. And she's buying a rental income property as well. So I help us go on to the wherever we want to go buy, and buy rental properties first, your primary home second.
So one of the things that you talk about, so I thought that you talked about doing the primary, and maybe I'm wrong. I thought that you talked about taking the equity from your primary home and then using that equity to buy your rental property, but that's not what you talk about. So tell
So
what are the first steps? How
yeah, absolutely. So it's both.
Okay.
Right? It's definitely both. I have clients that are in both categories. So I have clients that already own property and they're like, oh, you do international real estate. I can just sell mines, and they want to walk the exact same path as I did. And I said, no, no, no. I'm like, that's a mistake. I made a mistake. Don't walk in my exact footsteps. Okay. So we're going to jump over Queen's mistake. Okay. We're going to keep the property. We're going to tap the equity in that property. We're going to leverage it like it's a piggy bank. And then we're going to go on to the continent, the Caribbean, Latin America, wherever else you want to go, and purchase that international rental income property. So the client that I have right now that is going to Kenya, she already owns 2 properties. Her husband owns one and she owns one here in the United States. So what we did is we looked at what's called an HEI, a home equity investment. And she was able to get one for her property. Her husband is now in the middle of getting what's called a HELOC, which is another version of it, but it's a home equity line of credit. But what's magical about the HEI is that she doesn't have to make any monthly payments for 10 years. So now she can go and purchase this property in Kenya, which we've already started the paperwork. She's in contract and everything, and not have to worry about paying the United States for 10 years. So once her property is actually cash flowing, and we project it to be cash flowing within 18 months, probably faster, because she's buying the owner already built it. It's brand new. She'll be the first owner, but it's already built. So she doesn't have to worry about waiting for the construction process like I do. And so her trajectory is very fast, and she's probably gonna make her like 6 figures within 8 months. I'm gonna be honest, because it's a beach property in a very popular town in Kenya. Mm-hmm. And so so that is the if you inherited property, I teach you how to tap the equity in there. It's the same process as if you're already a homeowner here. But for those who want to own property, like they've never owned property at all, the route is to purchase the investment property first, wherever you want to purchase it. It can be here in the US so that you can leverage that money to go international, but you don't have to do that either. Like a lot of people think that they have to own here first and then go. You can go straight international if you have the funds, right? So there's 12 different ways that you can actually pull money from the United States if you have your assets set up correctly, okay? This is very strategic, okay? But if you have enough cash flowing assets to go, and it doesn't need to be an actual property, right? It could be life insurance. It could be your 401k, right? If you have enough to go and buy that property international cash, I always advise go international first. Because because short-term rentals, and there's 4 different ways to do rental income. It doesn't need to be a short-term rental, but that's the fastest way to get to 6 figures with real estate, right?
All right.
So here in the United States, short-term rentals are under attack because the hospitality industry has been losing money since Airbnb came on the scene. So when you go international and do an Airbnb, they're welcoming. That country wants you to do that there, because now you are bringing more people like you who have money into their country to spend money. They want you there.
Okay.
So they're not going to stop you from doing it. Now you have to do it the right way, permits and all the extra stuff. Mm-hmm. But they want you there, and they're going to help you succeed in whatever you need to do to get people over there and really create a streamlined process of more tourists. They're going to help you do it. Okay. So I always say, if you have enough cash flowing assets, go international, do the 18 months projected. This is an pretend there's like an asterisk, right? Because I'm not guaranteeing in 18 months you're going to make six figures, but you should if you do it right. Okay. And then you come back to the United States and you can buy whatever property you want.
So the reason why Airbnb is under attack here in the United States is why?
The hospitality industry is angry because they've been losing crap tons of money because most people prefer the home feel and being in an Airbnb. Yeah. They enjoy it because then they don't have to worry, and they don't have to worry about extra fees and things like that. I mean, now because of the hospitality industry being so angry, they've in certain markets, they'll add like hotel industry type of fees on top of their Airbnb because of them. But that was never that CEO's intention, right? He actually, I think he, if I'm not mistaken, he actually started, like his family had a bed and breakfast. So like, he just wanted to make it great. You know what I mean? And he wanted to share it with everyone else. And then the hotel industry was like, man, look, no, you're not coming up in here taking our piece of the pie. And all these billionaires were like, no. Even right now, they just like literally a couple of days ago, they striked it down in New York. So now it's banned. They finally got it out of New York. And I was like, dang, I was hoping they wouldn't make it. Because New York is the best one of the best markets to do it in is a city.
So you can't do Airbnb in New York anymore?
No, you cannot.
What?
Mm-hmm. And that's what they want. They want to do it in those big cities where people are making six figures in 1 month off of their properties.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Eris from LinkedIn said this is great information. Queen, you are. So listen, Queen, tell the people where to find you, because we need to know this information. We need to know this information. Tell them where to find you.
Absolutely. You guys can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook at The Queen Blueprint, typed very normal. Okay. And if you want to come into the clinic, it's actually being adapted as an app, but you can go to moneymindsetclinic.com and come in, get a consultation, speak to me. I'll help you out with all the things.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Of course, tonight we are having our master class for my free master class for our how to make money working from anywhere around the world, make money and owning your own time for our nurses. So you guys have a great day. It's going to be from 5 until 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you've not logged in, go to vpnursing.com to sign up. And I would look forward to seeing you. And thank you, Queen, for coming on. This is a great conversation. Great conversation. Thank you.